Hey Garfield students, how are you? This is Mr. Garcia. We are going to be watching the movie Walkout, and I have a surprise for all of you. I have Mita Cuaron here, and she's going to introduce the film for you.
Hi there. I once sat in those same chairs that you did. I was a student at Garfield. I was 15 years old. And I was part of that experience, and I'm here to tell you about what it was all about, how I felt, how I got involved. I had just graduated from Stevenson Junior High in East Los Angeles. It was the fall of '68 that I attended my first semester. And in the spring semester, before the walkouts, I wasn't really aware of the conditions of the community that I lived in were about. I didn't realize that the schools were different in different parts of the city, that all schools were not the same, which meant education was not the same. There was a difference, but I didn't know that. Until one community event that I attended with my other peer group students. We went to a community center, and it was a rainy, cold evening. The auditorium was filled with community, which consisted of leaders, some school teachers, a lot of parents, and a lot of students. And this is where I met Sal Castro. This must have been in January of '68. And the first things that came out of Sal Castro's mouth was, the schools are failing our children, your children. The students aren't being educated. They're being warehoused. They are like being babies. They were like, the teachers were babysitting us. That the curriculum was intentionally had a tracking system. And what does tracking mean? Tracking means that, for the most part, the students were being sidelined to go into vocational or industrial arts, home economics, secretarial school, and to be pushed into low-level jobs that had no future whatsoever. And if you didn't know any better, you didn't question it. You thought, oh, they're gonna train us to get jobs after high school. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that was all they were doing. College was never mentioned. Universities were never mentioned. And if that wasn't an opportunity that you wanted, then we had Army recruitment presence on the campus. The military was very present there on campus. And if you didn't want to become a mechanic, or you didn't want to become whatever, then go into the Army, and this is where you could prove yourself as being an American and being patriotic, and And the sad truth is that this separation of being not exposed to an education, we didn't know any better. Those were our options. The school was telling us what the options were: to become a worker or to become a soldier. And the third option was you become what I call an accidental parent. Because girls were just, we had no value. We would end up having children, and that was our lives: become a teenage mother, get vocational training, or our men, young boys, going to the army. And when you think about that, it was like living in the dark ages. There was no options, no choices whatsoever. So I'm not here to denigrate anybody for wanting to be a mechanic or to be a secretary. All jobs, all labor has value. But if that's the only thing that was fed to us in those years, then that was discriminatory. That was racist. And the Board of Education knew very well what they were doing. They were funneling us to be workers. Because, as Sal Castro would say, "Oh, Mr. Sal Castro, you know, why are you up in arms about this? Why are you up in arms? These kids, they're going to have jobs, and they're going to go into the military, and when they come back, there's the GI Bill, and you're messing up the equation here, the situation here. You know, Mexicans are very passive, gentle people, and you don't want to mess with that. So that was our lives. That was the school system. We were passive. We didn't know how to use our minds. We knew how to work with our hands. And Mexicans were seen as working with their hands, not using their brains. And it was tragic. It was absolutely tragic living in those times. Because that's how society saw us, as docile, passive, uninspiring, unmotivated people. We had no vision. We didn't even know our own history, which is the sad part here. We didn't know, we had no Chicano study, ethnic study classes. We didn't know our history to know better. We didn't know how rich Mexico was when you go back 500 years and more, and you see these beautiful pyramids, what our ancestors did. That to me is all the value of seeing what we did 500 years ago in building these beautiful pyramids. And now you're telling me I'm not motivated, I can't think. So that night, I learned about racism. I learned about oppression. I learned about discrimination. And I learned that our schools on the east side didn't come close to the west side. It was all done on us. And so this was the beginning of my awareness as a 15-year-old to see in my community the injustice and the separation of opportunity. So learning from Sal, he was aside from my parents, he was our leader, our mentor, and he advocated for us. He went to jail for us. He could have died for us. Because education, if you don't know any better, your life can be going down a rabbit hole. And he didn't want this for us. He wanted us to prosper. He wanted us to be like anybody else. But we had to fight for our education in this country that should be fair and equal. It was not back then. And we walked out of school for you, for people for people we didn't know. If it wasn't for us, it was for the future generations. To bring you close to your culture, to bring you close to your history, your ancestors, your tias, your mothers, your fathers. And so this was my lesson into my early politicalization, my consciousness, to know that just because this is America, nothing comes easy, especially for our communities of color. I came from a community of color.
Beautiful. So let's enjoy the movie Walkout, and then we'll talk to Mita Cuaron after the movie. Okay?